Hello and good morning. Welcome to the Sultry Diaries. My name is Martine and you are joining me this week from sunny Braemar up in Scotland. This week we are going to be continuing our theme from last week where we started to discuss our father lines. This week we're going to continue along this theme and we're going to be discussing a little bit more in depth our father lines, patriarchy, masculinity and war. Because let's face it, in the globe right now, this is something that is having a deep impact on all of us. We're all being impacted by the wars going on in the world. But I'd like to bring this back down to this family level, to this generational level, and the impact that this has on our generational homes. Now, last week I was sharing how we're up in Scotland and how my partner's family has quite a lot of military history and connection up in Scotland. We, with his grandfather being on one of the warships, the Mohawk, that was bombed in the war, and his grandfather's brother sadly losing his life at the tender age of 20 up in the Orkneys on HMS Royal Oak. Now, and the impact that this has on family lines. Now, it's quite poignant for us because his grandfather was one of 3 sons, and we have travelled up to Scotland with our 3 sons to come and show them the lands and holiday and tour around somewhat. But this week I'm going to switch over to my own father line and my own military history, because I think that it's something that so many of us have a rooted connection to in our families through the First World War, the Second World War, and all of the subsequent wars that have gone on since then. It's something that most of us in our lines have some form of connection to, an impact that's happened in our homes. Now, as a young child, I actually lived up in Scotland. We lived up in Elgin and Lossiemouth, and just the other day we went up that way to just go on a bit of a tour down those history paths down, and we went up to see the one of the old homes that I lived in, and we went to Lossiemouth to see the beaches across there, because I have some really fond memories of there. And it's quite funny because one of the homes that we lived in, one of my core memories of this home is that there was a bush in the front garden. Now, I was 2-3 years old when we lived here, and this bush towered over me, and it always frustrated me that I was not quite big enough to get up and climb up through the middle of this bush. The irony is that when we went to that garden just the other day, the bush is as high above me now as it was back then, just really rooting us back into the fact that as humans, as mammals, we are growing with nature around us. Now, we also went down to visit Lossiemouth and the beaches where the river and the estuary is there. And I have some memories of watching my father doing the good old-fashioned, well, not old-fashioned, the good old raft races, those teamwork, those team bonding races, and watching him do those. So it was really lovely to take my boys back to a place where I grew up. But I think that there's something also as an individual, if you've grown up in the military and you've moved around throughout your life, when you miss out on growing up within the roots of your own rooted family and generational homes, the places where you grew become your roots. So there was something quite poignant in it for me, going on that journey back through my own history and reclaiming and recapturing those moments and bringing them alive back within me. Now, this week of our holiday was actually a bit of we didn't really know where we were going to be staying this week. And the place where we're staying right now, Braemar, it came up as a property on Airbnb. And I was just really drawn to it. And I was like, I don't know, I feel like we need to go to this place. I'm not sure why. And this is what I love about the synchronicities of life, is that sometimes we can be drawn to something without really fully knowing why. What's my dog off over there? She's probably seen a squirrel. She has. She's seen a red squirrel. Let's see if we can go and explore. Willow! We get red squirrels in the garden here. Come on. And whenever she sees them, because we have squirrels at home in the garden, she barks at them and they come down. But of course here, they don't listen to her. Where are you? See, she's thick in the bushes. Willow, where are you? Come on, out you come. Leave the red squirrel alone. Go on you go. The other day when I was out in the garden, I've tried to film this episode a few times actually, and I've managed to fail completely with the tech on 2 occasions. And one of those times I was filming, they actually found a hedgehog in the garden and I had to go over and find and rescue them. But actually, I'll show you while I'm down this end of the garden, because we didn't know where we were going to stay, and this property came up, and I was like, let's go for it. Let's just do it. Let's book it. So we did. And once I told my parents where we were staying and where we were, my dad said, oh yeah, I stayed in Braemar back in 1973. I compete in the Highland Games. Well, where can I show you from? You get to see this stunning garden that we're staying in. Honestly, it's incredible. Now, this is where those synchronicities of life come in, because at the end of our garden, I don't think this is the best view, it looks like the back end of the centre. At the end of our garden, behind me here, that is the Highland Games Centre, where my father ran in front of the Royal Box in 1973, 5 years before I was even born. So little did he know all those years ago, when he was out there running as a 20-year-old hungover young man, that his future daughter would be staying in the property right next door. And little did I know when we booked it, I didn't even know my father had ran in the Highland Games. So we went round there and we had a little walk round the History Centre. Perhaps I'll put some videos and pictures on here for you to see. Whiskey. So, back to today's subject of our patriarchy, the hierarchy, our father lines, and the impact of our military upbringings on our generational homes. Because of course we have a very strong military presence in this country, and the military is designed to protect us as a nation, as humans, as people, as families, as villages, communities, societies. As a nation, the military is there designed to protect us. But there's an irony within this, Because when you are in the military, as a man or a woman now, when you're in the military and you are moved from base to base to base, this has an impact on the generational home. This has an impact on patterns that follow down through family lines. And one of those ways is that, firstly, when you're in the military, your elders are not invited to move with you as you move around the country and you are displaced from place to place. So instantly, within the military, that hierarchy, that vision of the elders is missing. And instead, it's the vision and the guidance of the military that's brought down through families instead. And as a young girl and as a child growing up in the military and not having grandparents and aunties and cousins close by, when we would visit our families, I would feel the difference in the connections that they had from growing up within those generational homes. So our elders are removed from the family within the military. And and also, once your children reach the tender age of 18, they are classed as an adult, even though we know that developmentally our brains are not fully formed into adult thinking until our mid-20s till 30s. When they're 18, they're no longer classed as dependent. They are no longer homed with the family. There is not a room provided or space for them within the military homes. So a military that is designed to protect our families and our homes is actually dismantling the families of those whose fathers and mothers are within the military. And this is done actually in a very similar way to children who are put into care, that when they reach the age of 18, the government goes, there you go, you're on your own. But this doesn't happen in a generational family home. This happens in government-structured environments and systems within the patriarchy. This isn't something that's organic and natural. Now, another way in which we are stripped within our families, within the military, is it's something that is pushed, advertised, sold as a really good thing, discounted too. And that is encouraging military families to send their children off to boarding school. This is something that still happens today. But there is, in psychology and in therapy, there's something called boarding school syndrome, where the deep impact of being sent to boarding school is just as traumatizing as if you were put into foster care or adopted out. It can be just as traumatizing and causes those neurodiversities in the brain. So there's an irony in this for me, that our military that is here to protect our nation, our families and us as human beings and our generational home, that those within that system is having that very thing stripped from the souls of their homes. Just watching my little dog walk around there. And so what's the impact then for the fathers, our forefathers who fought in the wars, and of course women now who are going to war? We see the impact of them when they return from war. They are traumatized, they do suffer from PTSD, and these behavior patterns come back into the family. Now, as we know, trauma impacts people in many ways, and quite often, not all cases, but quite often men can come home, and this can come through in their behaviour and them displaying anger, power over and control. It can also come through in those fathers being emotionally shut down too. And so as children, when you are growing in families where there are perhaps Fathers who are emotionally shut down, who are emotionally absent, who are silent, who don't bring love, touch, play, fun, joy, or who use power and control and anger and force. As children, we learn through experience, and we learn through the behaviour patterns within our homes. And if this is what we're witnessing, which is not a healthy patriarchy, because they've been impacted by being sent away and displaced from their home, what they come back into the home with is not healthy, because there was no healing and there was no support or knowledge or wisdom of the damage that this was doing to their brains. As children, we learn these behaviour patterns as normal. It feels normal for us because it's the experience that we know, whether that is with perhaps a father who didn't return from the war, so an absent father with a mother who's then forced into that role of more of that protection, or a father who comes home and uses that anger or that absence or that suppression or that being shut down. As children, when we grow up, it impacts what we seek in a relationship. So whether you are a son, you see that as an example of what a father should be. Not healthy, balanced, power within, but the opposite of what it should be. And as daughters, this is the experience you know of a man. And so when you grow up, when you find someone who behaves in the same way from the behaviour patterns sent down through their family lines, you feel this is normal. And it becomes your baseline for what is normal within a home. Not knowing that it's actually come from disruption and a brokenness within the home. Dogs are going nuts. She's charging round. You right, Willow? You might see her go past that way in a second. And then Jess will try and stop her, because she's the fun police, is Jess. You can hear her now. We've got one who loves to run around and charge, and the other one who thinks that she just needs to constantly suppress her and say, stop having fun. Perfect example of ways in which this happens in our homes. They've completely made me lose track of where I am. So war has an impact, a deep impact on our homes, on our generations, and on us as a human species. Again, you don't need to look far into nature to see what and how the matriarchy and the patriarchy function authentically and organically in nature. How that male role is to protect that outside circle of the home, being connected with the mothers who are doing the Mother Earth, the nurturing, the raising within the protection of that home. You see it in many, many mammal families, the lions, the wolves. You see this protection. You see this happening organically in nature. But when men's vision is turned so far away from our homes that they've lost sight of what it is that we're actually here to protect, and it becomes about resources and money and power and ego, we've lost sight of what it is that the patriarchy is about within our homes. And you can see this on a global scale now. The men in charge, making decisions about resources and money and power and ego. None of this is about what you see in nature, which is about keeping the family safe so the next generation grows healthy and thrives within their family home. So how does this impact the men in terms of their body and their soul when their vision is turned so far away from their home that it becomes about those external things, which, as we know now, is so much about money? It leaves them completely disconnected from what the role of the patriarchy is within nature. And how do they deal with these emotions of anger and suppression that's impacting the men in our nation? Now, of course, not all men, but we see how they are dealing with the anger, trying to suppress it with alcohol and drugs. And of course, we know that anger and frustration, that emotion, it comes from the liver. And what's the very thing that those drugs and alcohol are doing? They're damaging the very organ of the emotions from which they're trying to suppress. And what about those ones whose hearts are wounded, who can't show love, who can't show compassion and heart? They're struggling in their heart spaces. They end up perhaps on medications that suppress the very thing that they're trying to heal. So we can see how war, military, and the dismantling of the generational home is impacting our men. But yet we feel powerless as women to do anything, to step into that, to bring change. And we can't. We can't step out into those structures and bring change. The only place we can bring change and start to heal our homes is by looking in, back into our homes, in within our garden gates, and knowing that there is strength within Mother Earth. There is strength within the matriarchy that functions from a more silent place. A place where we can begin to help healing the hearts of our men, because the systems are not supporting our men who've been harmed in war. There are so many charities and organisations out there designed to help men who've been failed and harmed in war. Just as there are societies that are there to help children who've been sent to boarding school. If you're perhaps a parent in the military who is seeing all these flashing lights of send them to boarding school, the grounding, the consistency of education is important for their life, I implore you to go and seek out a company called Seen and Heard online, who are doing incredible work with supporting ex-boarders. They hold weekly circles for people, and they are starting to do work in boarding schools to bring safeguarding and protection and help so that they do not endure the suffering that many people did during their boarding school years. And it can feel quite hard, can't it, as a woman looking. I know as a mother of sons, there's not one part of me that will be encouraging them to sign up to the military. Not in my name. and my son's going to be wounded and harmed and fucked up in their brains in the same way that they were back in those olden days. So it's time for the matriarchy to support and bring balance within our homes. We can't step out into those structures and bring change. We do it from within the heart space of our homes. As someone who was raised in the military, whose forefathers fought in wars, the deep impact of this runs down through my family line. Does it run down through yours? Oh, it's a bit of a heavy subject today, isn't it? But it's something that's impacting us all, is it not? The threat of war, constantly. The threat from powerful men who feel like they are doing their job of protection, but they have lost sight of what it is that they're actually protecting, because it's all become about power and money and their egos, of course. So, from this stunning garden up in Braemar in Scotland to yours, let's bring balance and healing to the patriarchy by showing the steadfastness of the matriarchy from within our homes. Thank you for joining me today. Show you this stunning, I can't get over this garden. We are actually leaving here. We leave Scotland tomorrow, and we're actually heading down to my birthplace. Well, not to Cardiff, I was born in Wales, but we're heading down to Wales tomorrow, and I think that that's going to be a good time for us to make a switch over to discussing intuition and how this has also been stripped from our lives as something that is innate within all of us. But I don't know if I'm quite done up here in Braemar yet. I think there is still more to discuss with the patriarchy and the woundings within that structure and that system and the patriarchy in our homes. So I feel there'll be one more video up here in Braemar before we head down to Wales. But thank you for joining me. Take care.